The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 29. The prefect who wrote romance novels. Dong loved food just like Tang Fan did. When she was still in the Li family, she used to go to the Li family's kitchen to pester the chef to give her some food. Whenever they made pastries for the madam or the young master, they would put an extra piece or two when serving the dish, which would be frequently pilfered by Dong. Due to this, the 8-year-old shape was not that of a slender young girl but instead tended towards plumpness. Her days spent in the Li family kitchen was not in vain. At least Dong had learned a few things from the Li family's chef which had enabled her to satisfy the various demands of his elder brother's constant food cravings. Just like right now. After hearing Tang Fan read the recipe for this acacia leaves cold noodles, she also felt a craving for them. The brother and sister team worked to put the dish together as the brother climbed the tree and the sister pounded the leaves to extract juice from them to make the noodles. The white jade-like bowl was loaded with thin, delicate noodles made with the acacia leaves juice. It was then sprinkled with chopped garlic, sesame oil, and vinegar. In an instant, the aroma of the vinegar permeated in the room. Tang Fan and Dong both closed their eyes in blissful anticipation. With how they were at this moment, if someone declared that they were merely adopted siblings, no one would believe it. "Come on, let's eat." Tang Fan served a bowl of noodles to Suizhou, smiling as he pushed the seasonings and spoon over to him. Suizhou said nothing and only lowered his head to try the dish. It did indeed taste good. The freshly picked leaves had an herbal aroma, so once their juice seeped into the noodles, it made it taste fresh and delicious and perfect for the summer season. No wonder Tang Fan never forgot about them. When he nodded in agreement, Tang Fan's eyes lit up and said, "Let's try the golden chicken next time." Before Suizhou could speak, Dong already called out, "Gag, don't forget that you scratched your arm when you climbed that tree. If you go to catch chicken, you're going to get pecked at." Tang Fan glared at her and said, "I have not climbed the tree for a long time, my memory is just rusty, that's all. I'll get good at it again after a few more times." Dong wailed, "You're going to do it again? I had to stand under the tree and look after you. Don't you know how hard my heart was jumping up and down? I was so scared that you'd fall. If you actually do it again, there won't be a next time after that because I might have died of fright by then." Tang Fan reached out and tugged at her ear. "All you need to do is eat, little girl, and yet, you nag all day. Be careful or you won't be able to get married in the future." In spite of Dong's plumness, she was surprisingly agile. She jumped up and hid behind Suizhou in a flash, giggling as she made weird faces toward Tang Fan. Suizhou asked him, "Did you get hurt?" Tang Fan shook his head and said, "Don't listen to Dong's nonsense. I just got scratched by a branch." Suizhou nodded and did not speak again. Acacia leaves, cold noodles, cucumber salad, and spiced beef, the dishes were all very refreshing and appetizing. Eating them made Suizhou felt refreshed from his head to his toes. Suizhou used to live alone. Even if he knew how to cook, he was often too busy handling things with the Jinyiwei and solving cases. It meant that he would often have his meals while flipping through dossiers and not tasting any of the dishes he was eating. He seldom had the opportunity to sit around with a couple of people and chat as they ate while carefully tasting the flavors of the prepared food. At the beginning, he felt that it was a bit pointless to come back home for dinner if he was working late. It was only due to Tang Fan's insistence that had tried to do so. Now that he had gotten used to it though, he would make it a point to rush back home no matter how late it has gotten. After the meal, Dong to clean up while Suizhou said to Tang Fan, "Come with me." He brought Tang Fan to his study. "Sleeves," Suizhou ordered. He was always short and concise in his speech. He kept his words short and say only what was necessary. Master Tang thought to himself that it was good that he was smart. Otherwise, understanding the meaning of this clipped and one-word statement would have been challenging. When he rolled up his sleeve, a long gash could be seen on the outer side of his right arm. The wound was not deep, but it must have bled a lot at the beginning. Now that the wound had scabbed over, it looked a bit dreadful. Sui Zhou examined it, took out one of the bottles of ointment from the jars on the table, dabbed it with his fingers and applied it evenly on Tang Fan's wound. The cut scorched painfully, but the pain was manageable. Tang Fan didn't even grimace. After the ointment was smeared on the wound though, Tang Fan felt a comfortable cool sensation which seemed to even relieve the pain a lot. This medicine is really effective. I won't have to worry about falling down again. Tang Fan joked. A cold glance from Sui Zhou made him immediately shut up, though. You want to fall down again? Tang Fan. Master Tang tried to endure it, but he did not last. You have to admit though that those acacia leaves cold noodles was really great, right? He sounded like he had been wronged. General Sui Beihu turned his head away just in time for Master Tang to not see the flutter of a smile at the corner of his mouth. If you want to have them again in the future, do let me know, Sui Zhou replied, but only after a long while. Tang Fan smiled and aside, you're really a good brother. General Sui Beihu, who was given the title of good brother for his willingness to climb trees and pick leaves, felt exasperated. Didn't you say there was something you want to talk about the Li family matter? Master Tang went a few times and then switched to his proper serious business mode. He relayed all his speculations from beginning to end and followed it with additional remarks. I once heard Lao Li explained, and back then Li Man gave up on the imperial examination that year and decided to become a merchant. He suffered many losses due to his inexperience. He had lost his assets as well. The family owed a pile of debts and was on the verge of bankruptcy, making the situation quite desperate. But because of some unknown business dealings, the family's finances recovered overnight. Lao Li was just a steward and thus, did not know to the specifics of this business. But if we tie everything together, we have enough reason to speculate that Li Man was able to make a sudden financial recovery due to the assistance of the White Lotus Society, which meant those two were long acquaintances. With him having a virtuous wife, a filial son and considerable wealth, why else would Li Man be compelled to the point of killing his wife and son? Sui Zhou nodded and said, I will report about this to my superior and proceed the search for Li Man and Lady Chen. The White Lotus Society activities have become more and more rampant in recent years. There was no doubt that they have collaborated with the Warais during the Tumu stronghold crisis more than a decade ago. Tang Fan sighed at the mention of the great crisis that happened decades ago. He was not yet born the year when this shocking event happened, but it didn't stop him from understanding it. Not only him, but all the people in the world would have to sigh like Tang Fan did whenever the matter was brought up. Because of the emperor's capriciousness and ignorance, hundreds of thousands of people died, including notable civil and military officials, courtiers, and their assistants as well. On top of that, the capital's 3 legions were nearly wiped out. Later on, the emperor's previous imperial names became taboo, and the benevolent rule of the subsequent emperor Yingzong's was what was brought out to be talked about. However, Tang Fan felt that if a man's growth required the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, then it was just too tragic. What was done, and no matter how much Emperor Yingzong covered the matter up, there was simply no way to hide such a huge mistake. He had been taken as hostage and turned into a disgrace of the nation. Then the Warais barged right in when the capital was defenseless. If Yu Qian hadn't stepped forward, withstood against public opinion and persisted on installing a new emperor and then spearheaded the defense against the invaders, how the capital would be right now and how the great Ming would be right now, both were difficult to say. Tang Fan warned, looking at how the Tumu stronghold crisis went, the White Lotus Society's plans was quite grand. Most likely, this matter with Li Man is only the tip of the iceberg. Once the White Lotus Society became involved, it was not something that Tang Fan could solve alone. The Northern Administrative Court Division had more experience in this area, and it was more appropriate to leave the investigation of this matter to them. Sui Zhou nodded his head and said coldly, with how Li Man's character is, he would have done something like this without Lady Chen or the White Lotus Society's encouragement and compulsion. he was clearly showing that he had no kind feelings toward this man who had killed his own wife and son. There are plenty of men like him in this world which open up opportunities for the White Lotus Society to create chaos, added Tang Fan. Noticing how tired Suizhou looked, Tang Fan felt compelled to ask, "Are you having some difficulties?" Suizhou shook his head and said, "As I told you last time, the White Lotus Society's followers uses romantic novels to spread their doctrines in order to influence and incite the common citizens. We have been seizing a lot of books these days." Master Tang gave an and smiled a bit ingratiatingly. "Huangchuan, can't we talk about this? If you see a book called Pear Blossom Fate and don't see anything of note after you go through it, can you not confiscate it? There's also a book called The Flying Sword." His voice became quieter and quieter at the other man's expressionless stare until he eventually just looked guilty. Suizhou said, "There is an order from the top that said all romance books are to be seized. Those that check them only flip through them casually, making it hard to discover whether there was really something inside it or not. That's why it's better to just take everything rather than chance it. Furthermore," he paused, looking at Tang Fan with a hint of helplessness finally appearing on his cold expression, "you're a court official. If it became known that you are writing such kind of novels anonymously, your reputation will be ruined." Tang Fan chuckled and said, "What's wrong with doing it? I'll have you know that it's not only me who's doing it. A lot of people in the court do this, too. No one can tell who's who since everyone is using pen names. Otherwise, how could they support their families with their salaries alone? If they don't want to be corrupt, they can only resort to alternative methods. I might as well tell you. You know Assistant Minister He of the Ministry of Justice, right? He anonymously wrote the book Moon Viewing to the Sound of Tides. There also another one who had been in the Imperial Hanlin Academy the same year as I was, though he has been posted elsewhere now. He has written a couple of books for a living. Because his writing was more liberal than mine, the content was explicit and popular with the booksellers. His sales are higher than mine. There's also some people from the Ministry of Rights. Whenever each exam finished, they will sell the answer sheets of those with the highest ranking to the bookstore to earn a fee from it. Since there are students who want to go to the academy, they will go buy it for reference. They even get better money than us who were writing romance books." Suizhou listened to him recount this all like he was talking about his family's treasures with a dumbstruck expression. He was thinking about what Tang Fan said about the Assistant Minister He of the Ministry of Justice. He was an honest and serious old man of some renown. It was hard for Suizhou to imagine that the old man would write such romance book in private. With the Jinyiwei's vast information network, he could not believe that they haven't known about this kind of thing. It seemed that a bit of introspection was needed as well. Then he heard Tang Fan moan and groan, trying to win sympathy. "Ah, really, just look at us civil servants. What a prestige! The truth is that we study hard for decades, and once we became officials, we have to return courtesies after courtesies, but we have no money, so we can't take a single step forward. When our superiors throw banquet and we don't send gifts, that would be equivalent to offending them, making advancement even more tough. If we want to give gifts but no money, then we have no choice but to pilfer from those below us, making the normal citizens suffer. When all is said and done, who could blame them completely? Not that I advocate for them though. There just aren't many who are as smart and resourceful like me who could get extra income from simply writing books. I have a salary." Suizhou tried to cut off his ranting. But Tang Fan just kept going. "Don't you agree, Huangchuan?" What did you say?" Suizhou repeated, "I have a salary. Money is not an issue." The Jinyiwei, unlike the civil servants, received a monthly salary and travel allowances. Aside from receiving monthly salary just like the civil servants, the Jinyiwei received travel allowances for when they were carrying out duties outside. For those that frequently travel far for assignments in the Jinyiwei, their travel expenses were not meager. Not to mention that when they arrive at their assignments, they would get all sorts of gifts and unrecorded income. The Jinyiwei's original duty was related to imperial court ceremonies. Thus, they must maintain their imposing looks at all times aside from posturing as mighty and strong group of gentlemen that could command fear and awe from everyone who saw them. So, even if the court suffer from lack of funds and the Ministry of Revenue couldn't distribute salaries for a while, they would absolutely never dare to cut the pay of the Jinyiwei. Everyone knew that you can only squeeze something from the soft ones. Tang Fan had lived alone and had not needed to support a family. The addition of Adong in his life would not have cost much either. However, he was a connoisseur of good food, so he would sometimes dine in some fine places, resulting in him not having much savings. Suizhou, on the other hand, was a paragon of frugality. He also lived alone but did not have any expensive hobby, unlike Master Tang, who had an uncommon love for food. After work, he went straight home every day. He led a life which was simpler than an ascetic monk did. He would send New Year's gifts to his family and superiors in accordance to tradition, but at the year's end, he would still end up with a lot of savings. This complete blew Master Tang's mind. Hearing what he had said, Master Tang was stunned for a long time. Then laughed wildly and finally had to hold Suizhou's shoulders to steady his body while rubbing his stomach. Well then, this pair of brother and sister will depend on General Sui Beihu from now on. When I really outspend my salary, you have to help me out. Suizhou, Tang Fan could not help but laugh again, though he was really touched. He knew that this was not something that the other man would say to just anybody else. To be honest, Guangchuan, I don't really have a very good impression of the Jinyiwei. It was only after I met you that I learned that there was a man like you amongst the Jinyiwei, someone who was worthy of friendship and trust. Suizhou's cold eyes had a hint of warmth in them, though he still gave a short and concise just like earlier. Then he said, my maternal grandmother's birthday will be in 2 days' time. Would you like to come along to the celebration? This grandmother of Suizhou was surnamed Zhou, and she was the sister of the Empress Dowager Zhou. Empress Dowager Zhou was originally from an ordinary family. The Ming Dynasty had rules that state that all women in the imperial harem had to be selected from good families amongst the common citizens and not from the court officials' families. This is to prevent the harem members' families from joining together and form a rebellion. She first received the title of noble consort when she joined the harem, then eventually the title of Empress Dowager through her status as the emperor's mother. The Zhou family naturally rose into powers, riding on her success. Furthermore, her father was granted a posthumous title. Her brothers were each given nobility titles. On the account of his connections to the Empress Dowager Zhou, Suizhou's maternal grandfather was appointed as the commanding officer of the Jinyiwei. The commanding officer was the highest official position in the Jinyiwei, but it was not exclusively held by a single person. For instance, Wan Tong, the brother of noble consort Wan, also held the title of commanding officer, but he was the one with actual authority. There was another commanding officer named Yuan Bin who had once saved the former emperor's life. He had great influence over the Jinyiwei and held equivalent authority. Aside from these two people, there were many other commanding officers. The majority of them were empty posts granted by the emperor, and they were notorious for taking the salary for the title without actually doing anything. They have no real authority though. This kind of bequeathed title belonged to the ranks of the upstarts and was incomparable to the titles like that of Marquis of Wuhan, which was a hereditary title without real power. The title was just good enough to get some yearly provision from the court. The Sui family was held aloft by the Empress Dowager Zhou's blessings. Suizhou's father and brother also held empty posts in the Jinyiwei. They were the kind that only took salaries but did nothing, though the titles were very eye-catching all the same. They were not direct relatives of the Empress Dowager Zhou and did not even share her last name of Zhou, which added a layer of distinction between them. It was for this reason that when Suizhou first joined the Jinyiwei, he started with a low position and slowly worked his way up. Since the family's title were empty, many civil officials were generally reluctant to associate with the Sui family. It was either to avoid suspicion or to avoid lowering their status. However, Tang Fan was not thinking of any of that when he answered Sui Zhou's question. "We're brothers, so your grandmother is my grandmother, too. Call for me when it's time and I'll definitely go with you." Sui Zhou's heart warmed a little as he replied with a hum. Since the Li family incident was now deemed related with the White Lotus Society, the Northern Administrative Court Division attached great importance to it after it has been reported by Sui Zhou. Just as Tang Fan expected though, Li Man and Lady Chen had already planned and were definitely prepared for everything. When the men of the Northern Administrative Court Division caught up with the carriage suspected to be carrying members of the Li family in Beijing province, only Ah Qiu and a few other servants of the Li family were left inside. According to Ah Qiu and the others, the young master Li Lin did not actually move the family to Nanjing as originally agreed, but instead immediately gave some silver coins to each of the servants and told them to disperse to different directions. He took a carriage by himself and left in the direction of the north, leaving no traces behind. Aki and the rest of the servants still had no idea that the young master Li that they had traveled with was actually somebody else. With these developments, the search for Li Lin and Lady Chen was not going to be resolved anytime soon. It was also no longer within the authority of the Shuntian prefecture. When Sui Zhou handed the case over to his colleagues, Tang Fan could have just washed his hands off this case. However, every time he looked at Ah Dong, he would still occasionally thought of Lady Zhang and Ah Xia, and he could not help but feel sorry for their fates. With Sui Zhou's testimony and all the suspicious matters surrounding the case, the impeachment case against Tang Fan could no longer be pursued and was thus closed. Pan Bin specifically sent Lao Wang and his team to find Tang Fan and take him back to resume his post. Although the senior disciple brother of his frequently made all sort of inconveniences for him, his heart wasn't really bad. There was also the fact that they shared the same mentor. If it wasn't for those reasons, Tang Fan would not have given up his noble position as a scholar at the Imperial Hanlin Academy to come under his senior disciple brother's command. 2 days later, it was the birthday of old Madame Zhou. Tang Fan brought Ah Dong with him when he went with Sui Zhou to the Sui family residence to celebrate the birthday of his grandmother. Old Madame Zhou had given birth to a son and a daughter. That daughter was Sui Zhou's mother. After Sui Zhou's mother married his father, they had 3 children. Sui Zhou was the second child. He had an elder brother called Sui An and a younger sister called Sui Bi. Despite their relations to the Empress Dowager Zhou, the Sui family was an ordinary family. The family patriarch did not have harems like that of the Marquis of Wuhan or the Li family. Sui Zhou's father had only one wife and Sui Zhou's paternal grandparents were already dead. Old Madame Zhou's eldest son worked as a minor official in a foreign country and it was her daughter's family that remained in the capital. The siblings had decided that their mother who was getting on in age should remain in the capital instead of joining her son in a foreign country. Sui Zhou's family bought the neighboring residence next to the old lady so the family could look after her without other people gossiping much about it. After hearing about the Sui family's situation, Tang Fan had to ask, "Your family's situation doesn't seem too complicated, why do you have to move and live alone?" "My elder brother held a Beihu position but it was an empty title. He is not used to working as an official in the Jinyiwei and he wants to make a name for himself as a scholar but has not even passed the provincial exams yet. On top of that, we are now having the same title even though I started in a lower position than him. Rather than being subjected to disagreements and awkward situation of having a lower ranked elder brother, I prefer to move out and live in peace and quiet." With this, Tang Fan now understood. Every family have their own circumstances. Sui An, as the eldest son, was the heir of the family so their parents were bound to be partial to him. With Sui Zhou's character, he certainly wouldn't have the patience to endure such trying family situations and so he moved out to avoid conflicts and disagreements with his brother. The family of old Madame Zhou's son could not make it for her birthday celebration so the gathering was arranged by her daughter. Originally, due to the old madame's relationship with the Empress Dowager Zhou, the Sui family did not dare to slight her but the old lady herself did not want a very big event. She said she came from an ordinary family and that her present wealth was due to the blessings of the Empress Dowager. Such fortune should then be cherished and not to wantonly spent by wasting money and invite a huge number of people she didn't know to come and celebrate her birthday. She would rather just have her children and grandchildren came over for a lively family dinner. The birthday banquet was to be held at the old Madame Zhou's house. Sui Zhou's family only had to go next door to congratulate the old lady, which was very convenient. When Tang Fan arrived at the residence, he realized that except for him and Dong, all the people here were from the Sui family. Old Madame Zhou was more than 60 years old, with a head of gray hairs and a kindly grandmotherly look about her. Upon seeing Sui Zhou, she smiled and reached out to pull him over, then said, "My dear grandson came to see me. Quick, come here quickly." Despite Sui Zhou's normal solemn expression, his face could not help but soften at the sight of her. He paid his respect and gave good wishes for her birthday. He then presented his birthday gift as he respectfully called her grandmother. "Good, good, good," old Madame Zhou said thrice in a row. Seeing Tang Fan and Dong standing next to Sui Zhou, she smiled again and asked, "Zhou, is this your friend?" Before Sui Zhou could answer, someone else spoke up, "Second brother, today was supposed to be a family feast. The old madam said not to bring outsiders. Why did you bring someone we don't know? There's women here, too. He's not even someone close enough to the family. You're being way too careless." The one who spoke was the wife of Sui Zhou's older brother, Lady Qiao. Married brothers who were at odds with their family were most likely due to the influence of their wives. Sui Zhou wasn't married yet, but since she found him displeasing, she had been constantly talking into her husband's ears, which over time caused the bond between the brothers to be strained. There was also the fact that Sui Zhou grew up close to his grandmother. While their parents favor the eldest brother, old Madame Zhou was partial to Sui Zhou. Holding a position in the Jinyiwei was a lucrative post. As the second son, he was not the family's heir and he was also not surnamed Zhou. However, the old Madame Zhou had spoken to the Empress Dowager about Sui Zhou, and thus, his position in the Jinyiwei was more solid compared to his eldest brother's empty one. It was no wonder that Lady Jiao was not happy with him. However, she had forgotten that Sui Zhou was not someone she could harass as she liked. As soon as she finished talking, Sui Zhou said, "From now on, he is to be considered as family." Chapter end. The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 30. The matchmaking sweet grandmother Zhou. Those words were so overbearing that for a moment, no one could say anything and could only stared at Sui Zhou in disbelief. Where they at, Tang Fan was not in the position to start the conversation, but that does not stop him from looking and analyzing the people and the situation around. Looking at each person and their actions, he could glean a lot of information. For instance, Sui Zhou's parents were docile people. Otherwise, when Lady Jiao started talking, his mother could have intervened and could have stopped her. Another instance, Sui Zhou's elder brother was also a reserved man. He was the same as Sui Zhou in that regard. The difference was, Sui Zhou was quiet when there was no need to speak, but he will not mince words when the situation called for it. His elder brother's reticent though seemed to be both his nature and his habit. Tang Fan shook his head inwardly. Sui Zhou mentioned that Sui En wanted to take the imperial exam, but with a personality like this, even if he managed to pass the exam by sheer luck someday, it would be very hard for him to have a career as a government official. What superior officer would want a subordinate who was uptight and silent at all times? In contrast to her husband, Lady Jiao was very eloquent, eager to get ahead, and knew that her elders were too nice and docile to reprimand her. It was very likely that she could do whatever she wanted in their family residence. It was no wonder that Sui Zhou ended up wanting to move out. After Sui Zhou said these words, Tang Fan could no longer be silent. He stepped forward and bowed to old Madame Zhou. "This one is called Tang Fan, courtesy name Runking. You may call me Runking, madam." I am a prefect from the Shuntian prefecture and a friend of Guangchuan. I have brought my younger sister Adong today to congratulate you on your birthday. I wish you good fortune as boundless as the East China Sea and life as long as the South Mountain. Adong obediently followed suit and bowed as she said good day, Madame Zhou, and presented her their congratulatory gift. Madame Zhou smiled widely as she said, good, good. Since you are good family friends, there is no issue. It's rare for our Ajo to bring friends home and you even gave me birthday wishes. Ah, what a good child. This little lady is so pretty, too. Very good. It's all very good. These days it was fashionable to open the offered presents in front of the host's family. It did not matter how expensive they were as long as the meaning behind the gift were good, the host should be happy. Lady Jiao received the gift box, reached out to untie the rope around it and opened the box. What was taken out from inside was a longevity peach carved from white jade. The color was warm and it was well made. It was the size of a palm, suitable to be held in one's hand. Old Madame Zhou also received congratulatory gifts from the palace, but she was too diligent and had been frugal all her life. She was not one for wanton extravagance. For this gathering, she had only invited her daughter's family for a family feast. Upon seeing this gift, she was both ecstatic and surprised. It is fine if you had just come over. There was no need to spend so much money on such an expensive gift. Tang Fan smiled and said, I did not spend anything at all. Madam must know that my salary is low, so even if I did want to buy something like this, I won't be able to afford it. This longevity peach had been passed down in my family. I just thought it was suitable to be offered to such a great lady. This one hoped that the madam would like it. Despite his modest words, Sui Zhou knew that the jade was worth a lot of money just by looking at the color of the jade, and since it was an heirloom, its value was definitely high. For him to be able to have something like this, it meant that the Tang family was not doing so badly in the past. To be able to give something like that away, it also displayed the kind regards of the gift giver. Old Madame Zhou was the sister of the Empress Dowager, so the Sui family had hosted many dignitaries and nobles over the years. Moreover, in the Great Ming, respect for the elderly was the convention where old women could even scold officials in the middle of the street or make their palanquins took a detour. When Tang Fan was introduced as a Shuntian prefecture prefect, the people from the Sui family weren't really impressed. After all, both Sui Zhou's father and elder brother held positions in the Jinyiwei, even if they were empty ones. But once the peach jade was seen, even Lady Jiao had to tactfully shut her mouth. The old madam was still shaking her head as she said, don't spend so much money in the future. You coming over here is enough. Just seeing you all makes me so happy. Tang Fan said with a smile, you've misspoken, madam. In the future, when the madam celebrated her birthday at a venerable age, not only would I spend money but I will spend lots of it. I'll be sure to look for a bigger longevity peach for you, then. Old Lady Zhou laughed from his teasing. Greatly amused, she said, Runking's mouth is 100 times sweeter than Ajo and Aden. It must be hard for you to get along with a boring gourd like Ajo. If he bullies you, you must let me know. I'll give you pointers how to bully him back. Tang Fan thought it sounded like he was going to marry Sui Zhou, but he thought that the madam must be so old that she was only saying things without thinking, and so he just smiled ambiguously. It was just a family meal, but it was clear that the food on the table was prepared with utmost care. Although the Sui family was not one for pleasant chat, they had Tang Fan there who amused the old lady greatly. Sui Zhou's sister Sui Bi was a few years older than Adong, but the two young women got along quite well and was soon seen to be whisperings amongst themselves. In comparison, Sui Zhou's parents and brothers looked like chaperones who were merely there to sit. They only spoke a few words in between taking bites of their food. Lady Jiao tried to interject into the conversation, but the old madam didn't seem to like talking to her very much. Old Madame Zhou took Tang Fan's hand and kept asking him about his life. When she heard Tang Fan say that his parents had died early, that his eldest sister had married off and lived far away, and that he was not married yet. She sighed and said, "That's so sad, a government official in the capital who were all by your lonesome with no warm and caring person beside you. For someone of your stature, matchmakers must have already tread your threshold to sheds, right? What kind of woman do you like? Come and tell me. I'll help you find a good one, too." Tang Fan's scalp went numb upon hearing this. He quickly moved Suizhou out and used him as a shield. "As I recalled, madam, Guangchuan is a few years older than me. He's surely in a more hurry to settle down than me." As soon as the words fell, he felt a faint glance towards himself. Suizhou was clearly displeased with the way he was leading Calamity towards his way. "Runking has high standards, don't give him a red herring." Suizhou opened his mouth and tried to divert the old lady's attention. Old Madame Zhou was not happy with his statement. "Nonsense, just because one has a high standard doesn't mean that they should not marry. If worst comes to worst, I'll go to the Empress Dowager and ask her to help me find someone. If you don't like an ordinary woman, then a princess should do, right?" Tang Fan wasn't sure how to react to this. Right as he thought of how to stop this line of talk, he heard Lady Jiao made a chiding remark nearby. "Madam, you have not even known Runking for half a day, but you already trying to help him pull the marriage thread. I'm not sure why you're acting like you have a new grandson." Old Madame Zhou smiled and said, "I've taken a liking to Runking, so what's wrong with wanting to be his matchmaker? Why? Would you like me to look for a new wife for An, too? But then, wouldn't that mean that you would have to step aside?" Lady Jiao promptly shut up. Tang Fan tried everything he could to dissuade the old lady from the idea of matchmaking him. After the meal, Dong wanted to stay for some time since she had developed a friendship with Sui Bi. He and Suizhou bid the old lady goodbye but was only let go after they both promised that they will visit her more often. After they left, Master Tang couldn't help but wipe his sweat as he said, "Guangchuan, your grandmother is really hard to dissuade. Thank goodness that I didn't have a moment of soft-heartedness, else she might have actually gone to the palace right then and there to get the Empress Dowager to find me a princess. Is a princess not good enough?" It sounded like he was poking fun at him, but his expression was stern and his tone was frigid. However, Tang Fan had long since gotten accustomed to his deadpan face and thus, merely shook his head with a laugh. Was marrying a princess good? No lady in the realm was supposed to surpass a respected, proud daughter of the Son of Heaven. Of course, it would be good. Yet, becoming the emperor's son-in-law meant one could not participate in governance. Even if one was a bona fide official, they would have to resign in their post and stay home. Though that only applied to the civil officials. It was not as strict for military officers. During the Tumu stronghold crisis, for example, a princess consort named Jinyiwei had been a military official who had followed the former emperor on the expedition, then died in battle in order to protect him. So, in the point of view of civil officials, it was tragic. Marrying a daughter of the imperial family was tantamount to never going anywhere with their careers from there on. Therefore, any man with some aspirations would be afraid of marrying a daughter of the royal family. Tang Fan was not exactly like most government official though. He had studied hard for over a decade in the hopes of being able to expand his goals in life as well as do a little something for the common citizens. To aid their digestion after having a hearty meal, they walked slowly and leisurely in the direction of their home. Tang Fan laughed and teased him. The madam did say something that wasn't wrong though. You are not getting any younger and ought to be thinking about marriage. If you wait for a few more years, now one might want you anymore. Suizhou gave him a glance and asked, "Do you want me to get married?" Without waiting for Tang Fan to answer, Suizhou continued, "If I get married, you will have to move out." Tang Fan nodded, "That's reasonable. Convention must be observed after all." Suizhou, "If I get married you would have to find another house for yourself." Tang Fan, it is hard to find a house in the capital." Suizhou, "In a few years, when Dong grows old enough to get married, you will have to cook for yourself again. Makes sense. Tang Fan retorted, but then he had some thoughts. I can be married by that time then, too. You know. Suizhou, and then what if she found out that you were writing romance novels that was even selling well? Tang Fan. Suizhou continued, maybe you could ask her to help you with researching materials, or maybe you can also make her write them in order to subsidize the family expenses. Tang Fan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Things shouldn't get that bad, right? Suizhou responded, with your present salary, you still have to cover the expenses of going out to eat from time to time. When Dong gets married, you'll need to have a dowry saved up for her. The more Master Tang listened, the greener his face became. After you get married, there will be one more person to feed. Then when children are born, there will be more mouths to feed. Master Tang's expression got even more gruesome. Even so, General Sui Beihu continued to analyze the facts of life for his sake. By the rank of your parents and in accordance with matchmaker's criteria, you are likely to marry a woman like my sister-in-law. If your wife turned out to be not virtuous, your family will be unhappy and your children will suffer misfortune. Stop it. Master Tang felt himself losing strength. Getting married is terrible. I'd better not. General Sui Beihu gave a hum with a serious expression, obviously in agreement. When they were about to arrive home, they saw Xueling pacing back and forth by the entrance accompanied by several of the Jinyiwei. One of them saw Suizhou and said a few words to Xueling, who raised his head. His eyes lit up and greeted him in an exaggerated way. It was obvious that they had been waiting for some time. Big brother, you're back at last. With a look that didn't hide his anxiety, he spoke out in a hurry. Did anything happen? Suizhou said. Xueling glanced at Tang Fan for a moment, and didn't hide his intention. He took a half step forward and whispered to Suizhou, something big has happened. Suizhou frowned and immediately said, I'll go in and change in my uniform. As an operative of a special department, Xueling would not deliberately exaggerate his words. Tang Fan was a member of the Shuntian prefecture, his duties were not related to theirs. His rank was also too minor for him to ask them for any information, so he wisely did not ask them anything. He merely greeted Xueling and proceeded to get inside the house. On the other hand, Xueling was a bit embarrassed and said to Tang Fan, Runking, I'm in a hurry today, I'll treat you to a drink some other time. Tang Fan waved him off and said, You don't need to be like this just because you and I are friends. After all, you are in an official duty and must not be delayed. Before he could finish, Xueling lowered his voice and smiled bitterly, I'm afraid this time things are going to be very difficult. Tang Fan was stunned and pondered the meaning of his words, but Xueling said no more. Suizhou was very quick and came out of the inner room in no time at all. Before he could say a word to Tang Fan, the group had moved away. They were in such a hurry that he couldn't help but think further about what matter could have made Xueling look so miserable. It was definitely not something simple. Maybe it was something involving the imperial palace. If that was the case, then the less he knew the better. Those who knew too much tend to die quicker. Being of an open-minded man, Master Tang felt that this has nothing to do with him, and thus, he just leisurely reclined in the courtyard to read books. About a shishan later, a servant from the Sui family came to the door to inform that Dong had become very close to the young Miss Sui B, who had urged her to stay for the night, and therefore, Dong won't be returning until the next day. The young girl had become fast friends with the young Miss Sui B, and therefore he replied that it was understandable. However, he had started to worry. If Dong was not coming back today, what was he going to do about dinner? Master Tang, who had become spoiled with good food these days, felt that he couldn't stomach having the tasteless white congee that he usually cooked for himself. Ultimately, he decided to go out to eat. Since he moved in with Suizhou and had been fed by Dong regularly, he had rarely visited the noodle stall that he used to frequented. The owner of the noodle stall still recognized Tang Fan though. Upon seeing him, he greeted him with a smile, "Master Tang, is there no one cooking for you today at home?" Tang Fan smiled self-deprecatingly and replied, "Yes. I had to come to you for a meal today." The stall owner asked, "Same as usual?" Tang Fan, "The usual." Not long after, a steamy bowl of wontons were placed in front of him. The stall owner knew that he liked cilantro, so he specially sprinkled a little more in. The bowl was filled with mouth-watering, verdant greens, which Tang Fan was delighted to see. He picked up his chopsticks and was about to take dig in when he heard someone say, "Good for you Tang Runking, you can be so leisurely." Tang Fan looked up and laughed, "I wonder why the magpies are chirping on the branches early this morning, so it's brother Yukiao. Come on, I'll treat you to a bowl." The person who arrived was Xieqian courtesy name Yukiao. He was the prime scorer in the imperial exam during the 11th year of Chenghua, the same year as Tang Fang did. He had just turned 30 years of age and had a bright, confident aura that was not inferior to Tang Fan's. It was only due to the fact that Tang Fan was too young when he passed the exam that the title of the prime scorer was not given to him. Rumor was rampant that Xieqian stole the award from Tang Fan, causing many people to think that the relationship between the two were strained. Unbeknown to them, the relationship of the two was actually very good. Neither of them was petty-minded people. Xieqian smiled and with a flick of his robes, he sat down directly across from Tang Fan. "Is it your day off? Why aren't you hanging out in your study and was strolling of the streets instead?" Tang Fan teased. He turned his head and to signal to the stall owner to serve another bowl of wonton. Xieqian rolled his eyes and said, "If I were on duty today, how can I be as leisurely as you?" Tang Fan smacked himself on the forehead and said, "Ah, right. I've been away from the Imperial Hanlin Academy for less than a year and yet, I've already forgotten the rules." The other bowl wonton were quickly served. Tang Fan pushed the bowl towards Xieqian as he said, "Go on and try it. The food here are very good." Without saying another word, Xieqian took a sip of the soup with his spoon first, attitude casual. It was obvious from this that the two of them were on good terms, unlike what most outsiders thought. "It's good, very delicious." Xieqian gave his verbal approval. Afterwards, he shook his head and said, "You shouldn't have left Imperial Hanlin Academy. It's a bit boring but it's the most convenient way to join the cabinet in the future." Tang Fan grinned and said, "I'm someone that can't just stand doing nothing. If I had been made to sit still in the academy like you, I'll be bored to death." Xieqian gave him another glance and said, "Fine. I'm much more anxious than you are so I don't really hate it there. That being said, your willingness to work at the Shuntian prefecture should be enough to convince people of your eagerness." After a pause, he sighed, "If I hadn't robbed you of your prime scorer title 3 years ago." "No, stop that." Tang Fan raised his hand to stop him and said with utmost sincerity, "You're of confident character, Xie Yukiao. Why are you letting yourself be affected by this type of rumor? When we entered the palace at that time, our rankings were already decided. Everything that happened afterwards were just formalities. You shouldn't let such nonsense bother you. You deserve the Prime Scorer Award, brother Yukiao. I believe so myself. Don't ever say otherwise from now on." Xieqian snorted, Fine, I won't say it again. I just mentioned it a little and yet you go and turned it into a big lecture." He approached closer to Tang Fan and with a lowered voice he said, "I'm afraid something has happened in the palace. First it was Xueling and Suizhou, and now Xieqian was also saying this." Tang Fan felt it chilled in his heart as he asked in an equally lowered voice, "Why do you say that?" Xieqian answered, "Maester Zhong was originally ordered to enter the palace to present poems for the occasion but returned very shortly after he left. I also heard that several cabinet ministers had hastily entered the palace for an urgent meeting. This is a rest day in the government. This is so unusual. It could only mean that something must have gone wrong." He was a straightforward man and was decently close to Tang Fan. He knew that Tang Fan was not someone who would senselessly spread words, and thus, he could confidently share his doubts with him. Tang Fan thought for a bit and said, "We are of such low ranks that it is useless to speculate much. If something truly major has happened, then we better go home early today and stay low lest the imperial censors latched onto us for impeachment." Xie Qian nodded in agreement. "You're right, I'd better go back as soon as possible after I finish this bowl of wontons, before anything goes wrong." Tang Fan laughed and said, "Yes, yes. Go home quickly and keep your lovely lady company." Xie Qian just got married the year before and was considered a late marriage at his age. However, he was still at the period of his marriage where passions ran strong. Xie Qian chuckled and asked, "Are you envious? Then let your sister-in-law find you one, too. With your character and appearance, you'll probably get overwhelmed with prospects." Tang Fan shook his head and said, "What overwhelmed with prospects? Each and every one of the ladies will just insist that if they're not marrying me, they won't marry at all." Xie Qian huffed a laugh and said, "You're so shameless." They chatted for a while and finished their wonton soup. Then they bid each other goodbye and left towards their respective homes. When Master Tang returned home, he flipped through his book, which conclusion he hadn't gotten to finish earlier. Once he did, he sighed over the fate of the heroine. He then freshened up, changed into his inner robes and got ready for bed. There was silence outside with the voice of the night watch floating away from a distance. Since Suizhou had not yet returned, he thought that thing must have been really a difficult matter in the palace. Right at this moment, a loud banging of the courtyard door came from the outside. It was so loud that it disturbed one's eardrums with the extreme droning, as the sound was extraordinarily piercing in the quiet the night. Tang Fan frowned and put on the outer robes that he had just taken off. He knew that whoever came was definitely not Suizhou, but he hadn't a clue as whoever could have come at his door in the middle of the night. As he was pondering, he walked towards the courtyard gate. He lifted the latch and opened the gate only to see several men with tall hat and grey clothes. They held lanterns in their hands and blades on their waist. Each of them had cold and indifferent expressions. The man at the lead asked coldly, "Are you Tang Fan?" Tang Fan's eyes glanced past the character West embroidered on their sleeves. He nodded and asked, "And who might you gentlemen be?" "The Western Depot has been ordered to have you come with us to the palace at once," he replied. Might this one dare to ask what for? They were not interested in giving him any details. Instead, the two men behind him came forward and held Tang Fan, one to the left and one to the right, as if they were escorting a prisoner. Tang Fan smiled bitterly to himself, wondering what kind of pitfall had Wang Zhi dug for him this time. Then I have to go back and change into my official uniform, right? One mustn't be disrespectful when you're in the palace. The leader's dead fish-like eyes rolled over him and said coldly, "Then go quickly. Don't waste the time." The Western and Eastern depots were really arrogant. It was not even because Tang Fan was a mere low 6th rank official. Even if it was Pan Bin, he will only get a sneering look from them. These men might be working for the two depots, but they themselves were not eunuchs. They were manpower transferred from the Jinyiwei to help fill posts at the depots. They were normal men, but after working in the Eastern and Western depots for a long time, their mannerisms are even more arrogant than the normal Jinyiwei by a few points. Tang Fan didn't bother to talk to them again. He simply went inside and changed into his official clothes, but he only came out after a quarter of a shishan. "I'm ready. Let's go." The men of the Western Depot saw how well he was cooperating. They no longer took an aggressive posture as they did before. "Can you ride a horse?" Tang Fan nodded. A soldier then brought a brown-haired horse. Tang Fan turned and mounted it. The sound of clopping hooves echoed as the group quickly disappeared into the night. Only their few lanterns swayed in the distance, shining one moment and dimming the next. From the moment the men of the Western Depot arrived at his courtyard, Tang Fan had begun to ponder their purpose in coming. Suizhou had not returned since he entered the palace in the afternoon, and Xie had also said that something unusual may have happened in the palace. It appeared that things might have far exceeded their imaginations, but what was the point of calling someone completely irrelevant like him into the palace? Chapter end.